Matthew Nickel, resident, regarding quantum biology and agriculture. Good morning, Matthew. Nice to see you again.
Good to see familiar faces and new ones. I'm just going to get right into this. So I titled this Quantum Biology and Agriculture, the Intro to the Spatial Web. So this all is part of the biodigital convergence, and there are 4 parts to it: nano for nanotechnology, bio for biotechnology and gene editing, info for IT, and cogno for cognitive science, the nano-bio-info-cogno experiment. So Mississauga urban development strategy. Basically, Mississauga is an urban innovation testbed building on smart city strategy, using technological solutions for issues like climate change, such as autonomous vehicles. And autonomous vehicles and electric vehicles are mentioned in the Smart City Master Plan. And then we get to this Ecosource article, Peel Local Food Literacy in Action Project. So urban agriculture is mentioned, which is also brought up in the Smart City Master Plan. And in the Living Green Master Plan, it mentions an urban farm that is built in partnership with Ecosource. And urban farming is a part of smart farming, which includes biotechnology, gene editing, and all that beautiful stuff right there. And here with the Mississauga Urban Agriculture Strategy, it mentions climate change being mitigated when green spacing exists, increasing biodiversity. So biodiversity are frameworks or supporting tools to enhance contribution to quote-unquote sustainable development. So when you look at the ISO technical committees in particular, you could see that they have access to information on biotechnology and sustainable finance, and they can as well access documents from food, water, and soil quality as well. And then we get into the IEC, the International Electrotechnical Commission, industrial metaverse. It mentions that virtual simulations in the metaverse are used for experiencing climate change effects, driving behavioral changes in the real world. And then we get into environmental monitoring and the Internet of Things, which deals with smart sensors, smart cities, digital water, and cloud-based telemetry, among other things. And in this biodigital convergent circle chart, you could see various technologies and applications put into this experiment, from environmental monitoring to embodied computing. And the Sustainable Development Goals are essentially mandates to complete the biodigital convergence. Here is Kristel van der Elst, the person who runs Policy Horizons, which was created by the Canadian Privy Council. She's also the CEO of the Global Foresight Group and former head of strategic foresight for the WEF, and she works in the U.S. Government Accountability Office. In order to sum up these 3 ways biodigital convergence is emerging: full physical integration, coevolution, and conceptual convergence of biological and digital tech systems. And then we get into new capabilities produced by convergence of digital and biological systems. And you get into altering the human genome with CRISPR, which is gene editing technology, and machine learning used to predict which genes to edit. And then you get into monitoring, altering, and manipulating human thoughts and behaviors through neurotechnologies and digital apps. So in this article exploring biodigital convergence, the use of CRISPR, turning organisms into biocomputers as a way to store and transmit information. Then you get into precision and smart farming, which utilizes robots inspecting plants, blockchain for data input, indoor vertical farms, AI controlling light and temperature, and that sort of a thing. And then you get into, in this agricultural and natural manufacturing technology, you get into air and soil sensors, equipment telematics, and telematics is mentioned in the Mississauga Smart City Master Plan. Then you also get into livestock biometrics, which get into things like GPS, RFID, and biometrics. And then you also get into crop sensors, infrastructural health sensors, Genetically designed food, which is the genetic design or creation of new strains of animals and plants. And then you also get in vitro lab meat. I just want to say on a side note that this article comes from 2013, but if you want something more up-to-date from 2023, 2024, utilize Genome Canada, and you guys can Google omics-guided technologies for scalable production of cell-cultivated meat. So this is actually a present reality. And then we get into synthetic biology, which is basically programming biology and expanding on biotechnology and using standardized parts to build or design materials, chemicals, food, and more. Hence, basically 3D bioprinting food or different kinds of power sources, etc. And then vertical farming expands on urban agriculture. Then we get into pursuing a Canadian moonshot program. The term goes back to the 1960s U.S. space program during the JFK administration. And the House of Commons Standing Committee on Science and Research aims to resolve social and environmental problems through research and development programs, working with international partners. And then you basically get into AI being used for data analysis, progress with food security, and agriculture, remote connectivity, pharma development, neuroscience, cancer, biotech, quantum computing, and climate change modeling. Quantum computing is also mentioned in the Mississauga Smart City Master Plan. Then we get into Moonshot Goal 1 here, and it mentions the realization of society in which human beings can be free from limitations of body, brain, space, time, space, and time by 2050, and Dr. Norihiro Higita is the program director. Although while that mentions 2050, this new lifestyle of robotic surrogates, I guess, or cybernetic avatars as they call it in this document, is welcomed by 2030 as their plan. So remote avatars utilize of course, robotics, 3D images as proxies, and augmentations of physical and cognitive abilities of humans using ICTs, or information communication tech, and robotics. And then this all leads towards something called Society 5.0, and we can see it starts from hunting and gathering and goes to the information era, and then on to Society 5.0, which is the next transition in which organizations like the UN and international standards organizations want, as well going down to the local level, hence the phrase think globally, act locally. So Society 5.0 incorporates AI, Internet of Things, and robotics, and then cyberspace and physical space are integrated in a cyber-physical system. This is referred to as the Spatial Web, which we'll get to, but we can look at Gabriel Rene, who runs Versus AI out in BC, and he also runs the Spatial Web Foundation, which partners with the IEEE, and he also helped develop spatial web standards with the IEEE. The Spatial Web essentially blends physical and digital spaces as one, and you can see a difference here between the World Wide Web as websites linked together versus the Spatial Web links people, spaces, and assets together. So different spatial web technologies include digital twins, blockchain, Internet of Things, quantum computing, etc. Even though it says 5G, 6G should really be there because that's the next era which we're moving toward, and that's why I refer to you to Martin Maier over here, who works for the INRS at specifically the Optical Zeitgeist Laboratory, and he also sits on a review committee for the Natural Sciences and Engineering Research Council of Canada, and he's a member of the IEEE. He gets into head-mounted devices and extended reality, which connects avatars and users in the real world to the metaverse using Web3 technologies, which means blockchain, providing gamified experiences, opening the doors to the multiverse. And the digital twin is a virtual copy of a physical object, but there are three kinds: monitoring, simulation, and operational. Monitoring monitors the status of a physical system, like an autonomous car dashboard, and the simulation twin deals with simulation tools and machine learning schemes to provide insights about future states, so think about like car manufacturing or something. And then operational digital twin enables operators to interact with a cyber-physical system. Then you get into digital twins for 6G, which can be used to emulate an entity or function, or an Internet of Everything server like an extended reality-based healthcare. And then you get into something called tokenization, which represents a digitalization of value using the blockchain, and value is managed as a digital asset via a virtual token, and that is why there's a shift from economics to tokenomics. Then we get into from AI to active interference, the key to the true AI and 6G world brain over here. 6G transformation of Earth into a world brain or global mind through biomimicry, through human AI interaction networked into a cyber-physical system, and forests regulate resources with microhedral fungal networks. And you can see that the fungal links represent ground or fiber optic communications, and scent mails represent air or wireless communications. And then we get into circular causality, which is the core concept of cybernetics, which is used to biomimic the root brain, which would be like plants anchored in soil by the brain and the sexual organs in the air, and for symbiosis between internet and human being, hence the term interbeing. And you get into symbiogenesis, which is where organisms growing together to become one for mutual benefits, using these words. And circular causality deals with the teleological mechanism for a feedback-controlled metaverse. So yeah, that would be it. The truth is stranger than fiction, because with fiction you are obliged to stick to possibilities. Mark Twain.
You always amaze me, Matthew, when you come in 10 minutes, you get all this information, all this detail in there, and you nail it right on 10 minutes to the second. It's quite impressive. It's quite impressive. And just for committee's knowledge, Matthew has been to General Committee a few times, teaching us all things on biodigital convergence and quantum biology. So it's a lot to take in there every time you come, but the more and more you do, the more and more I absorb. So I don't know if there's any questions we have from committee at this stage. I know everybody was paying attention with interest, and I don't see any. So I do want to thank you again. You've been out a few times to council, which is great. Certainly do appreciate your civic engagement and coming and talking to us about all things that I think the majority of people don't know about. So thank you for your education, and thank you for your efforts.
May I just make a very quick statement before
Sure
I take a seat? Thank you, sir. So I came here, though, I just have an ask of the committee as well. That's why I brought this presentation forward as well. So I would request, just because I mentioned tokenization in this sort of segue from economics to tokenomics, that you could see this with cashless businesses and that sort of a thing. So I would personally ask that, in particular, the best example I can think of is Mississauga libraries all being cashless. And I think that we need to bring cash back, because I don't think a whole lot of people actually understand this agenda. And I think that a lot of people also, as well, there's a lot of cognitive nudges toward this Society 5.0, and I personally didn't ask for a cybernetic avatar to live my daily life to go get groceries, right? So, yeah, and as well, I think that people need to actually be informed of the long-term plans with the technology leading to Society 5.0, because all in all, in order to search for these things and to basically make this presentation, I had to know about these international standards organizations and things like this, and a lot of people don't necessarily know what to search. So, and then the last thing I will say, and then I will shut up, is when promoting what we call urban agriculture, we need to explain the technologies and the biotechnologies involved that utilize the ISO and IEC standards, so that people understand that all living organisms, meaning plants, bacteria, animals, and humans as examples, are quite literally being turned into biocomputers, and I never consented to be a biocomputer, so.
Well, I will say that your mission is informing people, so thank you for that. I won't, necessarily ask for a decision out of council or out of committee on any types of motions. The cashless piece, I certainly do understand. I think a lot of people got away from cash even just because of COVID, and it's a natural kind of thing that people did, and you didn't want to touch anything, and we've kind of evolved that way. I always carry 20 bucks in my wallet, though, just in case, so I do appreciate it. And again, I appreciate you coming and informing committee on these issues. And looking at the board, I don't have any questions for you this morning, Matthew, but again, thank you so much for coming. Can I have somebody move receipt of the deputation? Councillor Dasko? Oh, I see Melanie. Melanie's moved it. All in favor? Carried. Thank you, sir. We will see you again.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Mahoney, and keep carrying that cash.
I will. Okay, moving on to some